Hi, this is Ranjani. Welcome to episode 3 of Reviews with Ranjani. The book that we are going to review today is a completely different genre from what we saw the last time. The book that I'm currently reading, it's called 10% Human, and it talks about how your body's microbes hold the key to health and happiness. So this is quite a fascinating read, and the author is a microbiologist. She holds a PhD in evolutionary biology, and as the title indicates, in terms of cell volume, we are only 10% human, and which means that we host hundreds of trillions of microbes within us, which until recently we assumed did not really matter. The author though contends that a lot of these modern epidemics that plague us, such as obesity and allergies and certain autoimmune diseases, which have become more prominent and prevalent right now in the 21st century, have a relationship to what she calls the microbiome in our gut. And this is like a new area of research that has recently garnered a lot of attention. There are a couple of other books around the same topic that I've come across, which talks about the connection between the mind and gut and so on. And irrespective of being a scientific read, it still was quite a compelling book. So getting back to the book, how many genes do you think makes a human? So this was an unknown until quite recently, and the Human Genome Project, which sequenced the genes, answered that to be around 21,000. To put that number into perspective, that is pretty much close to the number of genes which a common worm has, which is quite startling, right? But then the author says that these 21,000 genes are not the only ones which we have. We do not live alone. We are, or each of us is a superorganism, and we are a collection of species which live together side by side and cooperate to form one single entity. So together with the microbes, which live within our human body, she says that there are around 4.4 million genes, and this is what she calls the microbiome. And taking a step back, she talks about how in 1900, more than a century ago, the life expectancy for humans was pretty much only around 31 years. And within a century, we have more than doubled it. And she also talks about how in the 21st century, we live in a sterile ceasefire, right? Where we hold back the infections through vaccinations and antibiotics and water sanitation and better health and hygienic practices at hospitals, at least across all the developed countries, and increasingly so in the developing world as well. So right now we are no longer threatened by illnesses caused by pathogens or germs, which is what used to be the top causes of mortality less than a century ago, things like smallpox and malaria and diphtheria. But then instead we have these new illnesses which is rising to prominence, something which she calls 21st century illnesses, things like allergies and autism and type 1 diabetes. So even obesity for that matter, she calls out this alarming statistic about how 1 out of 3 adults on earth are actually overweight. She also talks about how allergies affects nearly half of the folks in the developed countries. She put forth this example which I found really interesting about how East Germany and West Germany, when they were unified in 1990, gave us a very natural experiment to understand the impact that prosperity has on allergies. So studies apparently showed that Western Germany children they suffer from 3 times are more likely to suffer from hay fever and twice as likely to have allergies than their counterparts from the East. So let me just talk about a couple of quotes from this book, which I found very interesting, right? About how much of an impact the microbiome has on our life and health and happiness. So this is from a study, and Beckett suggests that what we can extract from our food depends on what our microbial factory has been set up to expect. So for example, say I'm a vegetarian and I decide to have a chicken roast or a hog roast, and I would probably not have enough amino acid loving microbes to make the most out of it. Whereas a regular meat eater would probably have a sizable collection of suitable microbes and would extract more calories from the hog roast than I would as a vegetarian. And the same thing follows for nutrients as well, right? So she talks about how a person who eats very little fat would have very few microbes which are specialized for fat, and or donut or a chocolate bar would probably make it through the large intestine without being efficiently stripped of the remaining calorific content. Whereas someone who has a chocolate bar probably every day as a daily treat would have a larger population of fat munching bacteria, and they would strip out the next donut to its bare essentials and get the full dose of calories. And this is interesting because we always have this opinion that the number of calories in from any food is the same for different people, and it may not really mean so. I may extract say 100 calories versus another person may have 105 calories out of the same food, and this impacts how we view weight gain and weight loss, right? So like I said, this is quite a fascinating read, and if you are kind of wondering about origins of modern epidemics and conditions and the impact that the development has had on our, like the development over the last few decades has had on our body, this is definitely an excellent read. And we probably do not have all the answers all the time because research is constantly changing, but awareness and knowledge of such would probably allow us to ask the right questions. So with that, I just want to add like one additional tip or suggestion. If you are generally interested in learning more about the vulnerability of the human body as such, here are like a really good bunch of recommendations. It includes both fiction, non-fiction, and it makes great read. And I'd probably like to end with this quote. It's by this person called Paul Collen from this book called